Today we're exploring one of North Carolina's hidden historic treasures, Fort Dobbs, right in the heart of Iredell County. I'm joined by my co-host of the YouTube channel Hometown Chronicle USA, Scharf. Today we step back into the mid-1700s to learn about this frontier's fort's role in the French and Indian War, its impact on local settlers, and the fascinating history preserved here. We were guided by site director Scott Douglas, who shared incredible insight into the fort's history and its place in North Carolina's past. So let's dive into the history of Fort Dobbs. So Scott, we greatly appreciate you for having us here, man.
Thanks for being here.
Absolutely,
really
and thank you for sacrificing in your garb today with 90-degree weather.
We do it all the time, actually. At Fort Dobbs, we make a point of whenever possible, even if it's a normal day where there's no special tours or anything, we dress in period clothing to, as we go through the recreated fort, kind of give people a more immersive experience.
For sure.
But it is pretty hot on a July day.
That is hot. These are some thick socks.
Well, yeah, they're made out of wool. They did have linen stockings at the time, but wool. You see that for soldiers a lot. They wear out. They last a lot longer.
Right.
I do have linen breeches and a waistcoat, and then a linen shirt. But soldiers, when they got uniforms, they were always wool. Mm-hmm. It's hot in the summer, but it's one coat for an entire year. Yeah. So it's durable. It's going to protect you from the rain. It is going to keep you warm in the winter, and they don't catch fire if you're shooting a cannon and there's sparks. So you sweat a little bit in July and you deal with it.
It's all worth it to not catch on fire.
Yes, exactly.
Wool also dries out quickly and it doesn't smell as bad, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits to it, even though it's
there definitely are. Yeah, and so, the fort that we're at here is a 6-year-old replica of the fort that stood on this spot during the French and Indian War. In the 1750s, the region of North Carolina where I-77 runs now, between the Yadkin and Catawba River, this was the backcountry. They would have called it the frontier. It's the edge of settlement in what is still a British colony. And the British are fighting the French in a war that actually spreads around the entire world, but it starts in North America. And it's a thing here on the frontier of North Carolina because scattered farming families who have recently moved to this area, they're in danger. American Indian allies of the French, people like the Shawnee who live hundreds of miles from here in Ohio, are sending war parties as far as North Carolina. Yeah, and so, if they come here in big numbers, they can kill a bunch of these civilian families. That's why Governor Arthur Dobbs needs a garrison of soldiers. Those guys need a base where they can live, they can store supplies, so they build a fort right here.
I don't know if we mentioned already, but what time period are we talking about?
The French and Indian War. So the war starts in 1754. Construction on Fort Dobbs begins the following year, and we know it's finished in 1756. Okay. In fact, we have a letter from that year describing the fort, which for us today is the only reason we were able to recreate it.
Oh, wow.
There are no drawings of Fort Dobbs that exist from the 1700s. We just have this one letter that is really detailed. It was a report to the government that ironically was sent with a drawing, but we've never found that. But the report tells us that it's made out of oak logs. Mm-hmm. We know the biggest ones, if you guys look at the corner, are 16 inches thick.
Yes.
So they are bulletproof pieces of wood. They're actually so big, they're hard to set on fire. The shape is what they called an oblong square. It's a rectangle that's 3 stories high above ground. And on either side of the building, there's a corner, like the one we're standing next to, that sticks out. And these would allow men to fire weapons out of hundreds of openings in any direction. Okay. There's only 50 guys here generally, but it is a really strong building, again, that they can use as their base of operations. If they're directly attacked, it's going to be hard for any enemy force to destroy this place.
This is, everything looks very hard to penetrate here, for sure.
So I'm curious, you're saying this was rebuilt based off of descriptions from a single letter that was a report to the government?
So the dimensions and everything are from that letter. Okay. Now, we are lucky as far as figuring out, how do they put, supporting beams and stuff like that inside. We do a little bit of educated guesswork. There are drawings of similar styles of fort that existed elsewhere in North America. replica. And we know a lot about general period construction techniques from a lot of historians and building specialists. So we kind of put all that together with the description of Fort Dobbs specifically and arrive at something that maybe it's not 100% what was here in 1756. It's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Extremely educated guess, though.
Yes, exactly. And it beats the fact that for 50 years of this being a state historic site, for most of that time, until we built this fort, all we had here was a hole in the ground.
What?
Well, we had an archaeological site. So the original fort, not to spoil the ending, but the French lost the war. The frontier kept moving west, and Fort Dobbs was abandoned. So it wasn't needed. It quickly rotted. People scavenged materials out of it. They took it apart.
Yeah.
By the early 1800s, it's gone. This is a field. And farmers actually leveled the ground. They filled in things the soldiers had dug. For instance, we know there was a cellar, a basement, that was under half the building. We only know that because farmers filled it in. As they plowed on the surface, they didn't go down deeply enough to destroy that buried shape in our clay soil.
Wow,
so archaeologists were able to find it, right?
Okay.
But the building itself was gone for a long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, for a long time, all visitors could see was the cellar. We found part of a ditch that surrounded the fort. But that was all that was out here.
When was that part discovered, do you know?
Well, actually, I mean, no one really lost the knowledge of where the fort stood, but it was in 1969 that the cellar was excavated and like major archaeology was going on out here. So the full-time soldiers here, and I should explain, these guys were not in the British Army, even though we are a British colony. They are full-time soldiers who serve the province of North Carolina. They're called provincials. So they're almost like our National Guard today. They belong to North Carolina. There's only 50 of them, and they can only cover so much ground. But every male civilian who was 16 to 60 years old, if they were not enslaved, they served in the militia. So that was required by law. They only had a couple days a year of training. They were supposed to provide their own guns. Not everybody could do that. They weren't well trained. But the idea was they could help the soldiers here. They could be drafted for short periods, and they could go look over the bigger countryside for the enemy. And really the way that they succeed in defending the frontier is actually not up to the soldiers out here. It's the fact that North Carolina is allied with other Native Americans. The Cherokee, living in the mountains west of us, are British friends when this war begins, when Fort Dobbs is built. And it's the fact that the Cherokee are fighting the Shawnee and fighting the French, as well as the Catawba, who live near Charlotte. They're British allies. Having these friends nearby that are very effective warriors is really what makes the job of this handful of soldiers possible out here.
Cool. So shall we mosey inside?
Let's go on inside. Sure.
Let's make it happen.
As
you
we
had
come
mentioned
in,
something. You had mentioned about enslaved labor.
Yes.
And so, what was that landscape like around these parts during the time period?
Well, we've been doing more research on that recently. North Carolina is the parts of North Carolina, the regions vary a lot at this time. Large-scale plantation slavery, as we tend to think of it, exists. It is more in the east, where there's older settlement, there's rice plantations, there's lots of tobacco being grown, that sort of stuff. The numbers are kind of hard to come by. There's not a formal census. But I want to say off the top of my head that around the time the war starts, say in 1755, there's the new governor wants an accounting of how many people are in the province. And I believe he comes up with there being about 60,000 people living in North Carolina. 20,000 of those are enslaved Africans. So it's a large portion of the population out east. Now out here in the western frontier, none of these people have been here for more than about 5 or 6 years.
Oh, wow.
They're all coming from up north where land is expensive. Many of them are brand new off the boat immigrants. They're coming here just to set up stuff. And we know, there's no town next to Fort Dobbs. But part of the reason the fort is here is that where Statesville is today is a collection of about 40 families living within several miles of this spot. It's a cluster of people. And out of those 40 or so families in 1756, I think we've identified three of those households that own enslaved African people. And that were...
Three out of how many?
Out of 40 in this immediate region. Now, you know, if you look at the wider region of the frontier, out of all the, 1,000 or so white households that are in what was colonial Rowan County, I think, and we're always finding more people, but I think we're up to, when the war starts, a few dozen enslaved African people. So slavery is here, but it's not the major part of the landscape,
Gotcha.
So.
And of those families, what were they doing here? Mostly farming and.
The great majority are farmers. They're really growing a lot of grains in this region, and we think raising cattle as well. There was a grist mill just a couple miles from here. You know, where already, even though there's not a town, so people are bringing their rye and wheat and flour there. There's some textile production on a limited scale. People are growing linen. And hemp as well, and even though fabric is available here from England, they're also making some basic forms of that fabric. We know of individuals in the settlement who were there was a couple blacksmiths, some tailors, people who make clothing, some shoemakers, so people that are specializing in that sort of work. So, but come on through here, guys, when you're ready.
Please do.
So. The entire building here, by the way, the modern museum, we have furnished with replica furniture and clothing and weaponry. So nothing in here is from the 1750s. It's all based on stuff from then. But what that means for our visitors is that when we do tours of Fort Dobbs, with the exception of weapons, people can touch anything in here. They can put on a uniform if it's a cold July day. They can lay down in a bed. They can really, we hope, interact with the space and get more of a sense of what it's like to actually live in here. It's not a static museum where you're looking at stuff behind ropes, basically. So as we go through, anything you guys want to look at or pick up or ask questions about, let me know.
So this is a museum where you're saying, please touch.
Yes, please touch.
Don't touch anything.
Please touch.
My kids would love that.
Well,
Keep their hands off.
Yeah, definitely.
So we see all the, the holes that are here. So can you explain to the audience what the reason for these?
Yeah, well, again, the fort is meant to be defended. And so the description that we have tells us that there were enough openings that you could fire about 100 guns per floor. So as purely defense, having a loophole every couple of feet allows soldiers lots of options of where they can shoot if they're under attack. Again, there's only 50 men, but between the hundreds of openings, they can cover all different directions. And beyond that, of course, we have to have a few electric lights in this modern facility. They need natural light coming in here. And it's, these loopholes aren't big. We don't have any big windows on the ground floor because if an enemy soldier gets up to the wall, they could come in that window. So down here it's a little bit dim, but it lets a little bit of air in, a little bit of light, but mainly they're there for shooting.
Sweet.
Now I'll just point out the room that we're in here, we have set up as a supply room. So we've got cool stuff in the cellar underground. Everything else, thousands of pounds of flour, extra clothing, tools, all that stuff would be stored in a storehouse before it's issued to the soldiers. And we know that some of the stuff here, military goods, things like weapons and gunpowder, would actually be reaching Fort Dobbs from 4,000 miles away.
What?
Again, the soldiers here are not in the British Army, but North Carolina doesn't have a warehouse full of guns when the war starts. So the king sends over gifts of all of this equipment during the war, and these North Carolina soldiers utilize that. But those farmers we were talking about, the people who live nearby, when they sell that flour or corn or peaches to the soldiers, all that stuff would come together in here.
Okay.
So.
Where'd that stuff land when it came here from overseas?
Well, the port of Wilmington is our main seaport. We also have Beaufort at the coast. North Carolina's problem in this period, the reason we're never as rich as Virginia and South Carolina is that we don't have really good big seaports, but we are getting stuff out there at the coast,
Do we have any of the names of the 50 people that...
Well, so the soldiers change over time. The officers, the men in charge, they can serve throughout the entire war if they want to, but they might sometimes be sent different places.
Yeah.
We know in 1756, the commander here is a 22-year-old Irishman named Hugh Waddell. So we know his name.
W-A-D-D-E-L-L?
W-A-D-D-E-L-L,
Okay.
yeah. So, officers show up a lot more in colonial paperwork. They're the ones signing letters and all that. We have, through our research, been able to identify about 36 enlisted men, not all of them from Fort Dobbs, just out of the hundreds of guys who served North Carolina during this war. We've managed to scrape together a few of their names. One of the problems we have in our research is that a lot of North Carolina's day-to-day military records from this period have been lost. So every military unit would have kept what was called a muster roll. When men joined the army, they'd have their name, where they're from, their occupation, what they looked like. We don't have that. So we only get these guys like if someone is killed, if someone runs away, if they desert, and they put an ad in the newspaper looking for him. Those are the few that we have. And I'll just point out, we talked about how there's a corner on either side. So in here, you can kind of see how this would allow you to fire in all different directions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So they had to be pretty strategic about, because it was only 50 men and you have all of these different,
Right.
like where, as far as placement, like you would, I guess, receive intel from folks that are
Yeah, I mean, hopefully
outside.
you've got those militia scouting
Yeah.
that might spot the enemy before they engage here. I'm sure they're going to put out their own guards and stuff at a distance. Hopefully they're not being caught by surprise.
Or I'm over here and like, hey Murph,
Right,
I
yeah.
need your help.
Well, exactly.
Over this window.
And we don't know if they had like assigned rooms for the men to be in combat, like battle stations.
Sure.
But it would make sense with only 50 men. Maybe you got a couple guys here, a couple guys in that room, a couple guys in the next room. And between, so yeah, you don't have a ton of people in here.
Right.
But, maybe the three of us could defend this flanker pretty effectively, yeah.
So as we head up, Scott, if you don't mind letting us know, what got you interested in history? Like, where did this love for history come from?
Well, I've always been, and actually, if you don't mind, before we do, I just want to point out the well here too, before we leave. We actually discovered the buried site of the fort's well in the archaeology. So this is where that was as a protected indoor water source.
Oh, that's cool. Then we don't have to go outside to get water.
Yeah, exactly. The fort's at the fork of a couple streams. We know there are springs, but if someone is out there shooting at you, you can't go get that water. So they had a well inside.
Sweet.
Cool.
And yeah, Frederick, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
but,
good. You're good. I was just trying to make sure I was cognizant of the time.
Yes, no, I appreciate
because I know
that.
you have something else.
Yeah. Well, and so I've always been interested in history. I was actually born in Ontario, and my grandfather actually ran a history museum. He was a curator.
You were born in it.
Yeah. My parents always made a point of taking us to historic sites when I was a kid. It's just something that I've always been drawn to.
Yeah.
And, I went to university originally to teach. But while I was in school, I started working in museums and discovered that this was the method of teaching, of educating people that I really enjoyed the most. So I've made a career out of it.
Love it.
So.
Love to hear it. So speaking of Canada, how well do you feel they do as it relates to preservation historically?
In Canada,
country,
I mean, generally pretty well. Every nation and every state, every province has its differences. I mean, the Canadian park system has a lot of national sites like our United States National Park System does that are crucial in preserving these historical sites. And then you have provincial parks. And, like here, there's always budgetary differences and stuff. But yeah, history is very important up there as well. So.
Sweet.
And I'll just point out, guys, the room that we're in right here, we have set up as a barrack. So this is a room where maybe 12 enlisted soldiers are going to spend their off-duty time. You notice there are 6 two-man wide berths in the bed. So you don't get your own bed if you're a private soldier. I don't know if you guys want to try it. You're welcome to, but there.
Kyle, go ahead and jump in,
Kyle,
man.
why don't you go?
You're the tallest. No, well, y'all may be neck and neck.
This is the the museum where you can try things out. So
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a straw-filled mattress, a straw-filled bolster pillow.
Is not comfy.
Well,
No?
Well, you know what? after a long day of shooting out of those holes.
Right. Chopping firewood.
You look like
and,
you look like this is a casket the way you're
It's
laying,
not too
man.
bad. I mean, if you've ever been backpacking, it's about that level.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, you know what? It's
Not too shabby.
It's growing on me.
Yeah.
All right, you finish the video, I'll be here.
Right. Yeah.
It's going to be different.
Yeah, now they are cooking in here too. There's no kitchen. Every room has a big fireplace. And so it's actually up to the soldiers, split up into groups of 6. Each mess will put their food together and they do their own cooking every day.
So there were no cabins or structures immediately outside of the fort? Or
we don't know of any
there?
permanent ones. Now, the archaeology has discovered the footprint of a small structure that was about 50 yards from the fort, which doesn't make sense as a permanent thing. That's too far to defend, in battle or anything. We think we know that where they may have had a blacksmithing forge set up, but that wouldn't have been a large structure either. And that one little house that we found, we haven't determined. It might be a temporary house from the first winter they were here while they were building the bigger fort. They wouldn't want to shiver in tents all winter. They might have thrown together some little log cabins or something and then gotten rid of them when the big building was done. But in general, it's just this one big structure. Yeah.
Okay. So as it relates to Iredell County, what does this do to the historical landscape for visitors? Because obviously it's Iredell County is growing, just as Charlotte and North Carolina in general.
Sure.
So how does this land, as it relates to preservation and providing individuals that are just moving to the area, a depiction of what historically the place was, the site was?
Yeah, well, I think it plays a very crucial role. I'll say, people whose families have been in the region in some cases since the 1750s, there's a large subset of people that maybe have been aware of Fort Dobbs, but because for a long time there was nothing out here, even local people didn't really have the best background and idea about what this was actually part of, what it was actually like. And then, the large number of newer residents moving to the region, this is when this area is founded as, a settlement. It is the start of the community that we still have here today. And so I think a lot of people appreciate the ability to, get in touch with those new roots that they have here, And I mean, in general, the French and Indian War as a topic is something that most people anywhere don't know much about. So, to have, I think we're one of only 12 or 13 forts from that war nationwide that have been restored or reconstructed. There's very few in the South because not as much fighting happened here. So it's a unique kind of gem that we have here in Iredell County. It's not, Civil War history is interesting, Revolutionary War history is interesting. There's a lot of that stuff around. This came
before that.
Yeah, and it comes before that. We get about 20,000 visitors a year here. A lot of those people are traveling Interstate 40 or Interstate 77. They see a brown sign, they stop off the highway, and we think that we're important for the community in that sense. It gets people here in Statesville. They'll eat lunch here, they'll spend the night here, they'll get a tank of gas, in addition to learning about our history. So let's go upstairs, guys.
Let's take a look.
Let's head on up. The paperwork that you all were able to find due to the, back during that time period, where was that being housed?
So a lot of crucial things are in the state archives of North Carolina. There are correspondence or paperwork that was government property back then, and it's stayed government property. But in some cases, we were talking about, finding the names of soldiers here and there. Sometimes it's finding the right edition of a newspaper from Pennsylvania, that is reporting on something that's happening, or someone's letter pops up in a family's attic that gives us a little bit more. But a lot of the main story is in the archives of the state. So.
This is pretty cozy. I could live here.
Yeah, it's nicer up here. Yeah.
I feel like I could actually live here.
Well, and actually, Kyle, you might compare these beds.
yeah, I'll jump in on this one.
Yeah.
This bed is not a two-person bed, Murph. Sorry.
Well, not you.
Well-
It's just going to be me solo.
This is a one-person.
Here you go. Oh, you want to do it again?
All right, yeah. How about you
I'm
check it out,
jumping
and then
in.
I'll compare it to
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So we're at. You got to compare this to Sealy Posturepedic.
This one's filled with feathers. So.
Oh,
No memory foam.
this is actually great.
Right? It's not too bad.
This is it.
That's a lot of feathers.
Yeah. Which can be expensive if you're not raising your own fowl.
Yeah.
That's why the soldiers'
that's
beds
comfortable.
just have straw.
That is really comfortable.
This is for the officers.
Let me check it
up
out.
This is for the officers.
here. Yeah.
I'll compare. Oh, okay. So
No,
this
it's
is,
comfortable.
Oh, yeah, that is a market upgrade.
Man.
Oh man.
I'm telling you.
You know what? I can get used to this.
We're doing things all wrong with the Sealy Posturepedic
That's right.
and purple and all these other ones that are out there.
Yeah, my mom's allergic to feathers.
Oh,
so
okay, yeah.
It won't work for everybody. But
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not too bad.
Yeah. So you said that
Those
this
ones are very nice.
this was for officers.
It
up
is,
here- up
yeah.
top.
So the officers here, they're not in the British Army either.
Okay.
They're people that Governor Dobbs thinks that he can trust with the responsibility of leading this unit. I mentioned earlier Hugh Waddell
Yep.
is the captain here in 1755, 56. He's 22 when the fort is built. The governor is also from Ireland. He knows Waddell's family from there. That's why as soon as Waddell comes over as a new immigrant, he gives him a military commission. He's a young man, 2 years younger than George Washington, who's commanding soldiers in Virginia during this war, who is driven like Washington. He wants to make a name for himself and make his way in the world. And Waddell is actually starting off as a captain here. He's going to end up, by the end of the war, as the colonel in charge of every North Carolinian. He is actually going to serve in Pennsylvania in combat, leading North Carolinians next to the British Army and next to friends like the Cherokee. And, he's the major up-and-coming guy for our colony, basically. But even as the colonel, he often makes his headquarters out here at Fort Dobbs. As a young captain, he'd probably be here with 2 lower-ranking officers, and there's 1 surgeon here typically, 1 doctor taking care of everyone's health. But all these guys are from wealthier families. That means they have an education.
They're used to feather beds.
Yeah, they're used to feather beds. Yeah, we don't want to shock any poorer people by sleeping on a feather bed. But they are able to provide better furniture, better clothing.
Yeah.
They are probably hiring private soldiers to act as their servants. That's common in the military.
Okay.
Although we were discussing slavery in the region, some of these guys are coming from slave-holding families at the coast. We don't have a letter saying it. They could have brought an enslaved African servant with them too. But at the very least, soldiers are doing that work. Emptying the chamber pots in the morning, all that dirty sort of stuff. But they have a big responsibility. These are the only full-time officers on the entire frontier of this colony for most of the war. It's up to them to defend this massive region. And again, they only have 50 soldiers. So it's men like Waddell who are working with the local militia to get those civilians to go out and patrol the countryside in an organized way and report here. And very crucially, when allies like the Cherokee are passing through this region to go north and kill the French or meet with other officials, they're stopping at Fort Dobbs. And Waddell is giving those men food and ammunition. He can send soldiers as escorts to carry them through the white settlements and get safely back to their mountain homes. In fact, in July of 1757, we've got a letter over here, a copy of the letter, written July 7th, just a few days from when we're filming here. There's soldiers from Virginia that escort 200 Cherokee to Fort Dobbs on their way back to South Carolina. George Washington, the Virginians' commander, writes a letter to Hugh Waddell, basically asking him to take care of these guys. And Waddell writes a letter sending his own officer to escort the Cherokee back there. Now, guys, we talked about the Cherokee being allies, but it's important to point out that during the war, that alliance falls apart. British colonists in the Carolinas keep moving west. More people keep showing up here. They need more land. They keep moving. In South Carolina, whose frontier is further west than where we're standing, we see people getting right into the hunting territory of the Cherokee. So they live more towards the mountains, but they hunt over a massive region to get enough deer, not only to feed themselves, but to trade the hides to the British for all kinds of manufactured goods. And the more white people there are that take that land, that kill the same deer, there's sort of a building tension. In 1758, when Hugh Waddell is in Pennsylvania, almost 600 Cherokee also go up there to help the British. But as the Cherokee come back home, they pass people in Virginia who've been under heavy, constant attack by French allies like the Shawnee. And Virginia militia are not good at telling a Cherokee man apart from a Shawnee. They kill about 40 Cherokee allies. They murder these guys. Their families, the Cherokees' families, never receive justice. They actually spend months working with the governors trying to get something to happen. Ultimately, no one is arrested. Nothing is done to make it right in any way. And by the spring of 1759, these families are fed up. In their culture at the time, like many Eastern American Indian cultures, we see what's known as blood law. If someone in your family is killed, you kill the murderer. You take a life for a life. Or you can kill someone from that nation. And it kind of restores a balance between your people. That's what they do. They kill the same number of colonists, but they don't kill Virginians. They head straight east from the mountains, and they kill the first white people they find, which are people who live in this area. So they're all British. They all look the same, but they're not the murderers. The Cherokee are happy, but now the British are upset, right? So in the middle of this big war, these friends are actively fighting against each other.
Because of not being able to recognize who was from what nation.
Well, yeah, and then
so they killed their allies.
And when it does get really bad, not to get into every little detail, but fuel is added to the fire by, you've got those disagreements, which are bad. But there's some people in 1759 on both sides that are trying to smooth things out. South Carolina's governor, I'm going to throw South Carolina under the bus big time. Their governor, William Littleton, basically wants to put the Cherokee in their place. He's much more powerful than North Carolina. He's taking the lead with this. He raises an army. He marches from Charleston towards the Cherokee towns around where Clemson is today, kind of the lower, upper part of South Carolina. He's met by Cherokee diplomats, leaders from different towns who come to speak with him. He takes them hostage. He holds them at a fort in South Carolina. He says he's not going to release them until the guilty Cherokee have been turned over for execution, even though they were just trying to get justice for their own people. In early 1760, there's an attempt by some Cherokee to free their leaders. And at this fort, Fort Prince George, gunfire breaks out, and the soldiers there slaughter these hostages, about 21 Cherokee headmen, leaders. At that point, it's not a misunderstanding anymore.
No, it's
all out war, And actually, that's when we've seen those people killed here in 1759, but it's in February of 1760, within weeks of the murders at Fort Prince George, that we see a wave of attacks across the frontier of both Carolinas. People as far east as modern-day Mount Airy and Winston-Salem and Lexington are being killed by Cherokee. That's 50 more miles away from the mountains than where we are. The reason the Cherokee can do that is we only have one tiny little fort. It can't do that much good, right? A lot of those militia soldiers are packing up their families. People abandon all that they own and run for their lives to the east. This entire region is an active war zone. We know for a week at the end of February 1760, Colonel Hugh Waddell, the guy in charge of every North Carolinian, is here. He only has 30 guys with guns.
Nowhere near enough.
No, nowhere near enough. Really, all he can do is protect the fort.
That's it.
He can't go help anybody.
No.
We know several families do make it here.
I was about to ask, did they see this as a safe space?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really set up for settlers to live here for long periods. But yes, and we don't know how many people come here. We don't have that written down. But, if you live a mile away and your neighbor's house is burned, you're coming here.
Yeah, you're gonna
and they're not going to
hightail
kick
it.
you out. We know that for several days, according to one of his letters that survives, Waddell says that he can see Cherokee in the distance watching this place. Now, he's aggressive. He sends out some of his small number of soldiers time and again to try and attack them, but the Cherokee always get away. He's getting frustrated. On the evening of February 27th, at 9 o'clock at night, the dogs of the people living here begin barking. Now, I'll invite you guys to look across the modern road here. Do you notice how the ridge kind of drops in the distance out there towards the trees? So somewhere in that low ground, in the dark, there's an unknown number of Cherokee, and they are getting too close. Waddell wants to get at them. He wants to get them away from his fort. So he leads a third of his manpower, 9 soldiers, out of this building. They go across that field.
9 soldiers?
Well, with him, it's 10, right? So they go across this field. They get into where, if you see the brown wheat stalks out there, they get about that far, not quite 300 yards, when they are suddenly fired on by dozens of warriors. The only reason I know what happens is Waddell does live. He writes a letter a couple days later. He says he was attacked by 60 to 70 Cherokee. He says, my men behaved very well. They held their fire till I gave the word, which I did when the enemy were not 12 steps distant, for they were charging to tomahawk us. So the Cherokee fire, they rush, the soldiers shoot literally into their faces.
Whoa.
Men on both sides are hit in that field. At the same instant, Waddell realized that even more Cherokee were way up here behind him attacking the fort.
While they were out.
While they're out. Now, we don't have the Cherokee's side of this.
Sure.
But Waddell, in his letter to the governor, he calls it a scheme on the part of the Indians to draw out part of the garrison. It was an ambush. It was a trap, and he fell into it. And it's only because he was super lucky that he and most of his men were able to fight their way back and get inside before they were all killed. Again, we talked about the Cherokee can't destroy this place.
Yeah.
They probably can't capture it, but if they can get some of the soldiers out and kill them, that's going to better their chances. For a short time, there's going to be shooting all around us up here.
Just mayhem.
Yeah, mayhem. Smoke filling these rooms, people screaming. Up here on the second floor, each of the corners of the building, we believe, had several small cannon, these swivel pieces. I don't think they're loaded. You guys can play with them if you want to.
You don't think they're loaded.
Oh, I'm pretty sure.
That's always like the number one.
Pretty sure.
Like, just
Right, yeah. Treat them as if you don't think they're loaded.
believe they're not loaded.
Now, let me show you here. This is, at a distance, going to fire a half-pound solid iron cannonball, about 1.5 inches wide. If the enemy's closer, you might instead load this with 12 musket balls, and it turns into a gigantic shotgun blast. Yeah. You guys can see, though. Weight, if you'd like to, feel free.
Oh, this is heavy.
How heavy is it?
That's 8 ounces, half a pound.
You don't want to get hit. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Do not
nice
want to get
size.
hit by this guy.
And the battle here is really quick. By the time the colonists are all inside, there's nothing else the Cherokee can accomplish, really.
Yeah.
So they leave, but they stay in the area for weeks. We know some of these same men are ambushed a mile from here just 2 weeks later, but they never again directly attack the fort. Waddell does say that from what he saw, his men had hit as many as 12 Cherokee. He says the next day he walks the battlefield, he finds a great deal of blood, but only the body of one Cherokee man.
Wow.
Now, some of the fort's horses have been taken, and he specifically thinks the other Cherokee have found their uncles and sons and brothers' bodies. They've carried them away. Anyone they can find. Overnight, yeah. They don't want to leave them behind.
Right.
We know on the fort side, 2 soldiers are wounded. One of those men is actually scalped. He's going to die in this building several days later. And we don't know how many civilians were here, but we know a boy is actually killed a short distance away from the fort that night as well. So that's the one battle that took place here.
Wow.
But just to wrap the story up, basically, so because, again, people don't really know about this war and its consequences, the fighting with the Cherokee actually keeps going another 1.5 years. It doesn't end till December of 1761.
But is it
central to here that the
Well,
fighting
so it
happens?
actually
or is it-
changes, because
Okay.
by the summer of 1760, the French are losing the war. And for the British, that means professional British Army soldiers, for the first time, can be sent down to the Carolinas to fight this new enemy, the Cherokee. And they do that in conjunction with thousands of men from South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, as well as allies like the Catawba. There's even Mohawk who come all the way from New York down here to make war on this new enemy. And between the summer of 1760 and the summer of 1761, we see different armies invade the Smoky Mountains and threaten eastern Tennessee. They're coming from different directions to where the Cherokee people live. These armies burn 23 out of about 50 Cherokee towns. 5,000 Cherokee people are left homeless. A South Carolina officer who becomes a hero in the Revolution, he's a young guy at this time called Francis Marion. He talks about using swords to cut down thousands of acres of corn that those people rely on to eat.
Wow.
Man.
So by the end of 1761, the Cherokee can't keep fighting. They have to agree to whatever the colonies want, basically. And even though neither side had planned to fight each other, the Carolinas benefit. The frontier takes over all of the Cherokees' hunting land. And in North Carolina, that means this is not an important spot. White settlement is 80 miles west of us overnight. So we don't need this place. By 1763, the World War is over. The British have won everywhere. And in North Carolina, our government closes Fort Dobbs. They take all the supplies out. They send everything away. They abandon this place, and they leave it here to rot. Our next governor, William Tryon, is here just a couple of years later. He describes it as a ruin. He says it could never be defended again, even if it was necessary. We know local people, as we kind of talked about, start to rip it to pieces. They recycle stuff. We have a Home Depot and a Lowe's down the street now, but they could come here for hinges and whatever they want. And we think by the early 1800s, this is an empty field.
Wow.
It's going to stay that way for 200 years until we built the fort that you're in right now.
That's wild.
So that's kind of the story.
So it was here for 50 years?
Well, I mean, we don't know an exact date when you can say it's not here anymore. It's that gradual decline. So it's used for 7 years. It's a landmark for about 50 years. We see it on maps of the region, but during that time, it's becoming more and more decrepit. It doesn't show up on maps after 1807. On state maps. So it's around that time that the last of it is totally gone. So right now we're just a few weeks into the construction of a new museum. Our current visitor center was built here in 1941 by the Daughters of the American Revolution. They were the ones that first preserved some of the land. They built this as a meeting space. They never intended it to be a museum for tens of thousands of people a year. So again, like how we built the fort, as a partnership between the state and our nonprofit support group, the Friends of Fort Dobbs, we are very thankful to be underway of construction of a 3,700 square foot modern facility.
Nice.
That'll have expanded visitor amenities, offices for our staff, and very importantly, most importantly, a expanded museum gallery where we can bring more artifacts up here and do a better job of telling the story of North Carolina's role in this big conflict.
Okay.
And we're hoping that'll be open in early 2026.
Okay. And then what would this be utilized as?
Well, at that point, it's actually a little up in the air. We may maintain some kind of exhibit space. It might be a workshop that we can open at times for special events. It'll stay here, but it's not going to be the main museum anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
But come on inside here. Hey, how you doing? You guys, let me introduce you to Samantha. This is Frederick and Kyle.
Hey, how you doing, Samantha? Nice to meet you as well.
Hello. We're filming.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. So, guys, look around in here. We've got examples of some of the artifacts. Again, we're going to bring more out of storage for the new museum, but these kind of give you an idea. We do have a small gift shop here.
Yeah.
Any final questions that I can help you with before I cut out?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having us.
no problem.
It's always appreciative when we're able to get some private tours, if you will, of
Yeah,
these historic sites. And we always like to kind of close with individuals expressing to the audiences just how important this site is,
Sure.
as well as where they can find you and some of the future plans that you
Yeah,
have.
definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, Fort Dobbs is North Carolina's link to this global conflict, the French and Indian War that becomes the 7 Years' War. It's one of just a handful of sites in the country that have, where forts have been restored or reconstructed from that period. It's a unusual style of fort to be reconstructed. We're the only big block house that's ever been recreated. So there's a lot that's special about it there. And I mean, the French and Indian War, a lot of people come to realize is a conflict that sets the stage for American independence. A lot of the arguments that these same generation of British colonists have with the mother country over governance, over taxation, over political rights, those come out of the French and Indian War. It stirs up all these issues. So, it's a crucial piece of history, even though most people don't know much about it, that directly leads to the founding of our country.
Yeah. And where can people find you all?
Well, we are active on Facebook and Instagram. Look for Fort Dobbs. We have a YouTube channel as well. We're not going to compete with you guys, I'm sure.
No, you're good.
We gotta stop.
Yeah. Cut. And we have, the state of North Carolina has a site for all of our state historic sites, nchistorocscites.org. And we also have our own fortdobbs.org website as well.
Sweet.
So.
Well, listen, we greatly appreciate you for
Thank
having
you
us
very
out, man.
much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That wraps up our visit to Historic Fort Dobbs, a place where history comes alive and the stories of North Carolina's frontier days are preserved for generations to come. If you're ever in Iredell County, make sure to stop by, walk the grounds, and experience this incredible piece of our past for yourself. And while you're at it, keep the history going by subscribing to both Hometown Chronicle USA and History Before Us on YouTube. Your support helps us bring more journeys like this one, connecting you to people, places, and stories that shaped our world.